There's never been a better time to create a SaaS company. So many new tools and products are developed every day, and with tech evolving so rapidly, there's really no shortage of opportunities and ideas. So join us as we dive deep into some of these amazing companies and explore the journeys that got them to where they are today. Welcome to Hey, Nice SaaS.
We're in the 7th month of being in business. I think the truck has moved. I call it moved because it's a 1-day-a-week deal. It's moved like 35 times. And we're on pace to do something like 300K. I think it's like, if you just decide to solve something, you're gonna solve it. I mean, so I think the dumbest people win. I love it. It's kind of my opinion.
Hey, Spencer. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. As you know, this is a new podcast, new topic, new theme. It's called Hey, Nice SaaS. So with that, I would love to kind of share a little bit about your background. I know you founded a few SaaS companies and you currently run something that's totally different. But yeah, share a little bit about your background and what you're doing today.
Sure. How's it going? My name is Spencer. I am 34, so I just turned 34. The brief cliff notes on my background: from Michigan, moved to Texas. When I moved to Texas, was managing a Target store. That Target store, I ended up getting into sales. Not in Target. I wanted out of Target. Loved working at Target, but wanted out of Target. Got a sales job where I was a door knocker, like Jehovah's Witness style, but for B2B SaaS. They said SaaS, it was for phone systems. And so I would door knock companies in Dallas. Did that, was pretty successful at it, and ended up working at Vonage, was one of the top producers at Vonage, I think top 3 in the country. And then I saw an opportunity I had a customer who needed something built that was pretty specific, and it seemed straightforward to me. There was like a blueprint, like, hey, I need this to do this. That's what they said. I took it to Vonage. Vonage basically was like, hey, we're not going to do that. It's a one-off. Even if we charge the customer some absorbent amount, it's still not worth it for us because then we have to support it long-term, which at the time I thought was narrow-sighted because I wanted a fat commission check. So it was a big deal. It was like 15 or 20 grand commission check. And so I thought that was unacceptable, and I was not necessarily looking to get into business, but I was hungry for money at the time and still am, in full transparency. And so what I did was I hired a dev team out of India that I hired off of Elance, which is now Upwork. And I said, here's the scope of work, which is basically the scope of work the customer gave me. And they built it. I think it cost all in was like $5,000, which was like the most insane amount of money I had ever heard of. And in full transparency, they said they could build it for like $1,500. And then scope of work got us to that $5,000 over time. And it was hosted in an AWS environment. I ended up selling that customer at Vonage. They signed up, got the commission check, and then I was left with an AWS bill every month to support it. And I was actually kind of mad about it because I was like, I spent $5,000 on this. So I was like, how can I recoup that $5,000? And so I spun it into a product that basically I offered the exact same thing that it did. And I started calling other people who I thought might need it purely out of, I wanted my money back. That was it. I was like, as soon as I get my money back, I'll shut this down. Not knowing that I was getting into SaaS or what SaaS was, didn't know what any of that stuff was. I was really focused on like just getting my money back. Ended up finding a couple of companies who liked it and signed up for it. And that company took off on me. I say took off, like the first year I was contemplating shutting it down over and over and over again. When it got to, I think about 150 grand in revenue, again, it's software, so we had like 3,000 in expenses on the year. I had quit my job, which at that point I had left Vonage. I was working somewhere else. Quit my job, went all in on that, grew it even higher, and then I took the profits from that, went on micro acquire because I thought that I couldn't grow it any further, and bought another company called HelloMedian.com. which is a screen share platform. And that's how I met, from MicroAcquire, I met Andrew Gazdecki. In the early days of MicroAcquire, I think that was the largest purchase that they had done. I say they, at the time it was just Andrew Gazdecki. So met him, and then that kind of launched my Twitter life and, all these different relationships, and started tweeting and trying to learn what software was, even though I was in the business, and how to market it and how to grow it. And I think a lot of what you read on Twitter is BS, but anyways, that gets us to where we are today. I don't know. How did I do?
No, it's great. I love that for so many reasons. For one, it's just action, right? Action is kind of at the beginning of you saw a need, you were approached with a need, and you thought it was kind of absurd to not fill that need. There was money to be made in serving that void. So I like that approach, as opposed to kind of like this, like you said, just jargon, fluff, without any real tangible tactical approach. Kind of like going from there. I know you mentioned a good bit about the startup days and how one problem solved kind of led into almost like a productized service without realizing it. And then kind of from there, one of the obstacles being server costs, AWS, monthly fees. So you almost kind of had this bridge of when you solved one problem, another one would arise. Growing pains, if you will. So talk to me just a bit about that, and kind of bridge that into, the next or the most recent problem that you solved, which created a new business for you. Kind of just that approach, that whole problem solution mentality that you have.
I don't think I have that, which is funny to say. I think people give me too much credit. I think if I would have sat down and thought about anything, I wouldn't do it. So I think I like to make the joke, whether it's funny or not, that I'm actually just an idiot, and I just go into things and then figure it out as it goes. Not that there's some sort of strategy there, right? The original plan was get the $5,000 back, and I started looking around, how can I get the $5,000 back? And that turned into a product and service. That was never necessarily the intention. I guess it was because I wanted the money, but and then that kind of concept has just served me through my whole life, which is I don't think about things, which is probably a mistake. I should think about things more. And so I looked at Median on MicroAcquire and was like, this is the greatest software I've ever seen. Let me try and buy it. And I went out and bought it. There's a long story there. That's been a lot of fun, but bought my first company with basically no knowledge, learned a lot from that, still run it today, and then saw another opportunity. And, for me, it was I just did the numbers and I let the spreadsheet decide if I should do it or not taking into consideration what the business was. It was this makes sense, I should do it kind of thing. And I just jumped in and did it. And I would say that's got me to where I am in life, for better or for worse. Some situations I would say it got me into trouble. For example, right now I'm in the process of selling my rental house portfolio, which, by the way, it'll work out in the grand scheme of things, but you just get exhausted with some stuff. But anyway, yeah. I say yes to too much. So for context, I own 2 6-figure software companies. I own a 6-figure garbage company. And then I have a real estate portfolio on top of that. So it's
abundance of free time. You have
that's where I'm going through the point of life. If anyone who's listening to that and is oh, that's a good what this guy's killing it. The money thing is going all right, but it's just I've got no space left in my brain for anything. So I'm in a period of my life where I'm trying to remove anything. My decision making on how I remove something out of my life is if I think about it when I'm in bed.
Nice.
Just out.
The
rental houses, I'm sitting there thinking oh, someone moves out this time, I've got to repair this toilet. Guess what? You're done. Out. I don't want to think about it anymore. And so I'm kind of going in a different direction, which is taking everything. I'm trying to cut the things that aren't killing it. They might be doing good, but they can do good for someone else.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think for one, there's a great deal of humility there and self-awareness, right? It's a blend of the two, because I'm partial to the approach of like ready, fire, aim, right? Like you can course correct as you go, but not taking any action doesn't really give you any insight. So being able to kind of do something and learn and then progress and change, and to your point, like where you are now, purging the things that aren't as fulfilling, or maybe they're too time consuming, or maybe they're borrowing time from something else that you would rather pour time into. So you mentioned it a bit and we talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but your trash company, give me the 30-second kind of conception story, what led to it. And then you mentioned something offline a bit, or something that really got my interest. It was you're approaching the blue collar business as a SaaS company. We'll kind of bring those two things together and talk a bit about that.
Yeah. The Cliff Notes version is I started Garbage Company, and not in the way that you would think. A lot of people, this is confusing. We pick up residential trash. Like we go to your house, we pick up the bins, we dump it in the garbage truck, we take it to the landfill. I found my garbage company got sold to private equity, went terrible. Like stopped picking up the trash, started overbilling us. I didn't care. My wife did. People started complaining. I saw it on Facebook group for my neighborhood that people were mad, and I ran the numbers for my neighborhood, and this is where like I got backed into this. There's 400 houses. Those 400 houses are billed anywhere from $33 to $66 a month. I was like, if I can just get these 400 houses, like this is a 6-figure business. Like why wouldn't I do this? And the margins look really good. And it was one day a week, right? Picking up trash. And so I posted in the Facebook group without thinking too much about it and said, hey, if you guys are as mad as you say you are, I'll start a garbage company. That post got 150 comments, which there's only 400 people in the neighborhood. So I'm like, shit, this is interesting. So I said, all right, I'll do it. But I said, I'll only do it if 200 people sign up. I'm not going to risk my life and my money unless I have customers like dedicated. Like I can't slow roll this. I'm not in the business of losing money, or didn't want to be, I guess. If you had a choice, I didn't want to. Anyways, I put up a website that I bought from Webflow Templates. Then I created a Stripe account and put up a link that said, click here for 3 months of trash service. And we were charging $100. And if 200 people signed up for that, I would start a trash company. In about 10 to 15 days, we got 150 signups, raised $15,000. And I looked at my wife. I'm like, shit. Like, do we push refund or do we do this? And she kind of looked at me. She's like, I'm not driving the truck. Like, it's up to you. And so I kept the money, and I had 30 days to buy a garbage truck and buy bins for an entire neighborhood. And I got on Facebook Marketplace, bought a used garbage truck because I refused to do a truck and trailer, which is like a truck and you put the trash in the trailer. Yeah. And I needed to supply the bins because the other company was coming to get them. So I bought 200 bins from a used bin dealer out of Michigan. There's a lot more to this whole story, and we started in January, running 1 day a week. And today, that company, like this January, like today's the 7th, or what is this, July? So we're in the 7th month of being in business. I think the truck has moved. I call it moved because it's a 1 day a week deal. It's moved like 35 times. And we're on pace to do something like $300K in the first year. And we've collected something like we had like a $25,000 month last month. And like I'm driving the garbage truck. Like I hire a driver, they'll quit or I'll fire them. And so it's been chaos. But yeah, what's interesting about that is just the Stripe component of it. And the fact that like you give me too much credit. I might have oversold you a bit in the sense that I said I was operating like a SaaS company. Let's break that down. I don't know how to operate anything any different, right? That's all I've kind of known. So like the Stripe, I was like, there's other credit card processors. So I just went with Stripe. And I connected it to Zapier, and we set up, all these automations and a referral program that is built for software companies. And turns out all that stuff in software works even better in blue collar, like a lot better. And so it just took off. We've done zero marketing. Facebook has been like our growth channel, but not from us posting. It's people posting for us. Thanks to the referral program, we incentivize them to get free trash service. So it's been wild. Anyways, I'm holding on to the seat of my pants over here.
No, I love there's so much there. That is, your journey is so rich in what I think to be like entertainment value, right? That's exciting. That's not a boring, like,
Yeah.
you don't strike me as the kind of person to just sit behind a desk and do the same thing for 20 years.
No.
But also on the other side of that, what's insightful, right? Like success leaves clues, regardless of your level of humility, like there is success and you've done well. And you may not have had the map in all of the answers initially, but what you're doing, and I think what people can learn from, what I'm learning from at least, is you seem to have a consistency with thinking about the user or the customer first. And I think that even if it's kind of by default of like, you're not listing out all of these, pretty features and benefits and how beautiful the packaging is. It's like, hey, here's a problem. I can solve it. And then it's just kind of like iterated upon after that. And again, that's kind of...
You're giving me way too much credit. Again, I guess I can't stress how dumb I am enough. Like, I feel like I was like, oh my God, there's a bunch of people who are unhappy and let's see if I can get them to give me money. It wasn't...
Which is, yeah.
More than that. And,
which is, again, it's thinking about the person, right? Like, hey, they're dissatisfied. They're unhappy with their current service. I know I can provide at least the same quality, likely better. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, how hard could it be? I mean, like, and again, the goal was small. It was like, just get the neighborhood. So it was like, I think the first test wasn't even that. Cause if you think about it, they signed up without seeing any service or any proof that I could do what I said I did. So it was literally like, hey, it was almost like a bet to myself or a challenge. It's like, do you think these people will give us money blindly? And we put up the site and said, we'll do a better job. And then we tried to, I will say there was a thought process to the offer. I was like, how can I make this, how can I get a bunch of random people that I've never met before that are like different ages to give money? And the thing that popped into my head was like, it goes back to kind of an Alex Hermosi thing, which is like, how can I make this a no-brainer offer? Like, how can I make this where it's like, why wouldn't you do? Like, you're dumb if you don't do this.
Yeah.
And that was how we structured it, which is like, if we don't get enough money, we'll give you the money back. So no risk. You either get better service or you get your money back. And then I also put like, they still want you as a customer. So like if I fail, you can always go back to them.
Which I love that. And I've read some of your marketing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even marketing. It was just like, how can I structure this where it's like, why wouldn't you say yes to it? And turns out I guess it resonated with people.
So I'm curious, like what your input would be on like you mentioned it again, like before we started recording, and I think you even said it again once we started, but like, there's just BS. There's a bunch of jargon. There's a bunch of hype. There's regurgitation of advice. I'm not in the Twitter world, but it exists everywhere. It's on LinkedIn. It's on Facebook. It's everyone who is just like parroting what everyone else has said. And it's just created this fluff of like just useless jargon. And what I think I find so refreshing about your approach is you almost like just peel all of that away and you just take action. The thing I would love to hear is kind of like, you mentioned the offer, right? And that's an easy thing to visualize because it's quite literally what you're offering to provide. In terms of finding those, first initial clients, initial users, if it's software, like even before product market fit, even before like nailing the offer, just that the early days, the startup days, what are some of the things you prioritize? And without kind of like underselling what you've done, because you've had success, like what are the things that you prioritize?
I'm not trying to undersell it. I can't stress it enough. Like you said, peel back the buzzwords. I didn't know any of those buzzwords existed when I started. Like that was a second, like I learned that later on. Like I didn't know what the garbage bins were called. Like until like there's an industry term called like 96-gallon poly cart. I would have never been like, you don't know these things. So I mean, it's not it's like you just, I don't know. Like, I think there's no peeling it back. Like, I just go and then I figure it out as I go, and I don't spend any time at all looking for someone to help me or give me advice or mentorship or finding creative ways to ask for help or get people to help me. It's like, no, I'm good on that. Like, I'll figure it out. And then, like, if I get stuck somewhere, I'll call people and say, hey, do you like, or if someone can't help me, I'll be like, do you know someone who does? And that's been the biggest thing that has helped me a lot, which is like, you know, the way I found the garbage company or the can manufacturer. So we manufacture our own cans now here in the United States. That was like, oh, do you know anyone who does that? And they're like, oh, you should call this person. That person's like, you should call this person. Like 3 calls down the chain. And now I'm manufacturing bins in Michigan and having them shipped to Texas. So, I mean, I think it's like, if you just decide to solve something, you're going to solve it. Like, it's not, you just one step at a time. Like, people try to like calculate everything out. And I almost feel like if you research, it's almost designed to hurt you. Like those Silicon Valley dorks and like YC founders, some of them work, but the success stories are the ones who like, I don't know. I'm not trying to pigeonhole the success stories or the failures or whatever, but like, I remember reading somewhere where it was like the Airbnb guys didn't have enough money, so they like sold cereal with presidents' faces on them. It's like that. Like, I could have told you that those guys were going to kill it because they're not like in the SaaS buzzword like Twitter sphere. And so I don't know. Did that answer your question?
No, I love it.
I think it's just like, if I said I need you to do this, for example, like you got to create almost like an incentive for yourself, because every American does this and they don't even realize it, especially Texan. It's like, if your car becomes unregistered and you get pulled over and the guy's like, hey, you're getting a ticket unless you get this registered, you go home and you figure out how to get it registered. It's the same process. Like, just it's not like some genius playbook. It's like, like, you know,
every problem is solvable, right? It's just kind of peeling back. Like, it's again, like, I think it's so refreshing because like we're inundated with all of the jargon and the fluff. Yeah, I think everybody's kind of jockeying for position, for like authority. So all they do is repeat the same fluff anyway. But to me, where I am like so drawn to is this space right here of like, hey, look, there's nothing fancy or special about it. There's no book of secret tricks. And it's just, it's doing the next thing. It's solving that next problem and it's moving in that direction. And I love what you said too. It's like, if it's important enough, you figure it out, basically. Yeah. Right. And it's also funny. Kind of from what you're sharing, it almost seems like the best remedy for the curse of knowledge is, you know, the ignorance is bliss approach, right? If you don't know all the obstacles you'll face, you'll get started.
You've seen this like in every interview ever. Like, I think Jeff Bezos was like, if he knew how hard definitely the NVIDIA guy.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
NVIDIA.
Like, they're on this crazy rise right now in this section of time in our life. And he goes, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I wouldn't have done it. And like, Jeff Bezos has said that in interviews. And like, I can say right now, like, that's how I feel about a bunch of things. Like, the rental house stuff is not passive. If I knew what I know now, I would have never have done it. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, if you spend time learning before you do it, then you won't do it. That's basically it. You're not giving yourself more knowledge. You're telling yourself like it's not worth your time. So I mean, so I think the dumbest people win. That's kind of it. It's kind of my opinion. It's like,
there's hope for me yet.
Yeah. No, you're too smart. That's why you gotta get dumber.
It's just like, not overthink. Cause I don't know. I love strategy and I love to plan. I've noticed that, right? It's like, I can see a trend when I overanalyze the thing. There's the fluff, analysis paralysis, whatever. But like at the core of it, when you just start to do the thing, you're going to learn by acting. You're going to learn what works and what doesn't. And then over time, eventually you look back and you've made some progress and you've built some momentum and you've done enough of the right things to make some sort of success in that direction. And again, I'm speaking from a place of like my own experience and then what I've gleaned from other people sharing their experience. But what I would love to hear, and again, I can't stress enough how like this to me is very refreshing, because you're not just filling someone with useless jargon. What you're doing is you're actually like speaking from your own reality, from your own experience, from your true perspective. And it's not the trendy or appealing thing to say. It's not like for views and clicks. It's the truth, and it's how you choose to spend your life. It's what you choose to fill your days with. It's the endeavors that you choose to take on. So kind of with that, I would love to hear where you are now in the blue collar space. You've taken what you've learned, acquiring of experiences and knowledge and skills from your days in Target to knocking doors to building SaaS to acquiring a SaaS. Like, you've learned something from each of these experiences. If someone hired you as a consultant, if they paid you a very hefty amount of money to just give them a condensed like frame of mind, not a blueprint, not a book of like, do this, this, and this, but a frame of mind, what would you kind of guide them in, and what would you kind of advise them with in terms of that approach mentally?
I guess what's their goal? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? Like, they
I
want
would say
to
startup,
a software startup, or what are they trying to do?
Yeah, I would say early day SaaS company or startup.
Yeah, I mean, it's total. I think there's two parts to it. Like, there's an action part on like what I think builds a good business. And then I think there's also like a personality. I'm not trying to eliminate people on the personality thing. I mean, you packaged a bunch up in there and there's a lot of learnings from it. But I think when you're doing door knocking, if we start there, what that taught me to be was just likable. Whether it was I don't want to say fake. I've never done the fake thing, but like when you're door knocking, a lot of these doors have been hit before by somebody else. It's almost refreshing to go back to door knocking, because I think people have like deemed it as not working, so they're not doing it as much anymore. But where I'm going with that is when you walk into someone and you got to try and get something from that receptionist, you have to be likable and you have to throw curveballs to them, stuff they haven't seen. And what I've learned is if you can get them smiling or happy or like make a little bit of brightness in their day, it changed the whole interaction. And so from door knocking, like if you start to hate it and you go in there going, I hate this job, like it's not gonna go good, and you're gonna hate it even more by the end, because each door will get worse and worse based on your kind of perspective. And so I almost use it as like stand-up trial grounds, like comedy I'd walk in and if they didn't smile, I'd be like, I'm sorry, let me try that again. Or like just different, like improv style jokes. And I would really try and break through. So I think that made me likable in the software world, or like taught me to like how people react based on like conversation and facial reactions. Like I could tell where it was going to go when I opened the door by like how they were wearing their face. Like, were they mad? Were they happy? A lot of people can probably understand that. And then how can I turn that around? So, I mean, I think I have good personal skills because I was forced to have good personal skills.
Yeah.
Now, I say all that to say none of that matters in SaaS unless you're onboarding or selling every single person. So in the software side of things, I take this perspective now, looking back on things, which is like, are you playing the game in hard mode or not? And that can be dialed down to like just knowing what you're doing. And what I mean by knowing what you're doing isn't what you probably think. If you don't like build a product that people already want, get the customers before you get started. And what I mean by that is like, then you know what you're doing. Like, I know I have to do this, right? I know what I'm doing. I know I got to do this. The customer asked for this. And your life is not anymore about some idea that you created at all. It should never be about that. It should be about a problem that you're trying to solve for someone, which sounds obvious. Here are some examples that I think would crush. Like, I think little niche things can scale to be big things, but you need to make money first. And so, like, here's an example just in my life right now that I'm solving for myself that I think could be a software product, which is why isn't there, and there might be, I haven't spent any time researching this, but like small businesses lose, call it 90% of their business, or lose the option to win 90% of business. These are made up numbers by not answering the phone or missing a phone call. Last week, I missed 2 phone calls, called both of them back, and they said they signed up for the competitor. And it turns out the competitor was more money. And you might be thinking like, well, why wouldn't they do that? It's like, well, they value a company that answers the phone.
Yeah.
They want good customer support. And if you don't answer the phone, that's it. You're done. And in blue collar, that's it. So there could easily be a product out there that I've already built, like it for our trash company, that just text every single person that missed a phone, like every missed phone call. So like right now, before we got on this call, I connected Ring Central to Zapier, and every missed call sends a text message that says, hey, Spencer here with Lone Star Trash. Sorry, I missed your call. How can I help? That could be a product of its own, right? Blue collar phone system designed only around retention or, sales, right? And then you could charge like a fixed $100 and then $1 every missed phone call or something like that. And then you could connect it to Stripe and then potentially show the revenue, like actually convert it for them. Like there's a lot of different ways. My point is like, that's a problem that's solved, and you would know what you're doing, right? Like so I don't know, maybe I'm doing a bad job explaining this. When I say know what you're doing, like know what your next step is and know what the result is before you do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like, and this is my opinion on Twitter, which might not be the best place to look, but people are building things that they're like, I have an idea. And people will pitch me like, I have an idea. And dude, ideas are great. Go collect the first $1,000 for that idea. If you get $1,000 for an idea before it even gets started, that's playing the game in easy mode. You sold something before the product even existed. And that kind of teaches you marketing and sales. So like, the biggest framework that I would give anybody in anything is probably some internal questions, which is like, will people pay for this before it exists? And what would it look like if it paid for itself before, like no money out of your pocket? That's what the trash company's done for me. Like we raised that $15,000 and we financed the bins and we financed the truck. So we kept the $15,000 in the bank and it's been off to the races. So we didn't lose any money when we started it. So it's like, can you get money before the product exists? That'd be the first question I would ask anybody. And then the second question is, how can you frame it where it pays for itself?
I love that. It makes everything attainable, right? Because like I've gotten lost into this world of all of the experts in tech and SaaS and everything. And I've shared with you the micro SaaS little thing I've been tinkering with. And I think like validating the idea first and then figuring out a way for it to be bootstrapped, like that makes it within reach, as opposed to this big grand mountain to climb.
You nailed it. And the reason I say you nailed it is like, I am a simpler person in the sense that like, I'm not trying to, let me do something for 10 years and then hopefully sell it for $10 million. And I'll be set for life. I'll be 40 something, like early 40s. And so, I don't need partners. I don't want partners. That makes things more complicated. I don't want investors. I don't want a job, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have jobs, but I picked them and I do them because I picked them and I wanted to.
Yeah.
I did all this stuff for freedom. I didn't do it to have to like explain myself to somebody else in any capacity, whether that's an investor or a partner. And I can run it the way I want to run it, for better or for worse. And thankfully it's been good for me. So I have like decent amount of freedom.
Yeah. No, I mean, you do it for autonomy, not for building a prison.
Right. And so that's the other part. Like the whole VC world has taught you to like, oh, but could you go faster? And why would you go faster? Because you get more money. And it goes back to like that. I've told you this. I think I've told you specifically this before. It goes back to like that fisherman in the Bahamas or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and then when you sell it for $1 gazillion, and the guy goes, well, then what? And then you go, you can fish whenever you want. And he's like, I do that right now.
Exactly. Was that Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek story? And
yeah, maybe. I don't know where I heard it.
Yeah. No, it's a great perspective because it's like you build the life you want now instead of delaying it, 20, 30 years. And
100%.
Yeah. And I love that. I think, we've got young families, so we value that autonomy. I think that's, one of the things that we share in. I love that someone like yourself who's doing the thing, you're not just sitting on the sidelines speaking about something. You're sharing as you're doing it. It's kind of like the build in public approach, but it's more like just action taking in public, right? It's not just some theoretical jargon. It's like, hey, look, here's what we did last month. Here's what we're projecting to do this quarter. And you're sharing that, but it's, I mean, you've built yourself. The next thing that you work on seems to be building more and more of that autonomy as opposed to like trading more of your time to become prisoner to the next thing you're building. And I don't think that can be appreciated enough, especially in today, like just 80-hour work weeks and bearing the burdens of the next thing. I think the inverse is more appealing to me.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the job thing. I didn't like it. I will put it that. Like, I think your alarm talks to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't like your alarm, there's bigger problems weighing down on you, and you can either choose to fix that or not.
Yeah.
But the alarm is it. Like when I didn't like my alarm, that was it. I was like, oh man, I do not want to get up because I don't want to go do this. And that little beeping noise in the morning was like a reminder that I didn't like it and dreaded it.
Yeah,
It's like levels of dread through the years, but the alarm is like the testament. Like if you ask someone if they hate their alarm, I think that's like the sign.
Yeah, it's like the living for the weekend approach, right? Like you don't crave a vacation because you don't need a life that you need a vacation from. All the things that we hear, but like the reality of it is, if you're doing the thing day in and day out that you despise, there's a problem there. But I love that. So anything I didn't ask that I should have?
I don't know, man. I don't know. It comes down to, did you cover what you wanted? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think you got it all.
Yeah, no, that was great. You've covered everything I wanted to touch on, and you've done it well. You share the actual story behind it, not just some theoretical jargon, like I said. So if people are interested in following your journey of Lone Star Trash and just your different endeavors, where can they find you? Where's the best place to interact with you?
Yeah, I mean, probably Twitter. Twitter is like my journal almost. Like something happens, I tweet about it. We win something, I tweet about it. Anytime you take a look at my Twitter, definitely understand that like I'm playing an engagement game to some extent. Like I'm trying to learn how marketing works. I think Twitter's a good place for that. And so, I tweet stuff. And then right before I tweet it, I think about like, how could I edit this to get the most possible engagement and still stay true to like what I would describe as my brand, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which is stupid people.
That's why I'm drawn to it so well. No, that's great. Well, man, I greatly appreciate it. It's always a fun time chatting with you. And maybe this is the first of many, because I know you're early on in this journey of the trash company, and you don't strike me as someone that's just going to stop playing the game.
No, I mean, who knows? You could get bought, but I'm not ready to sell. But
then it's the next thing after that, if it does.
I'm sure I'm like a squirrel, or a dog chasing a squirrel, like that movie Up with Doug. Be like, squirrel.
Nice. Yes.
Well, it's new shiny object, so who knows? Could be a problem.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been great. Again, I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a blast.
See you.